They said humans were the weakest species in the galaxy. No claws, no scales, no natural armor or venom. When the Zephyrian Empire conscripted us as cannon fodder for their war against the Void Swarm, they paired us with their most savage warriors. The beast races who could tear through steel with their bare hands. We were meant to die first, to buy them precious seconds. But the Empire made one critical mistake. They assumed weakness meant helplessness. They never bothered to study what happens when you corner the most adaptable predator the universe has ever produced. They never learned that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our bodies, it's our minds. And the terrifying lengths we'll go to protect those we've chosen to call family. The beasts taught us how to fight. We taught them something far more dangerous, how to think like humans. Marcus Chen pressed his face against the transport ship's grimy viewport, watching Earth shrink to a pale blue dot among the stars. Around him, 300 other humans sat in cramped metal benches, their faces showing the same mixture of terror and disbelief. None of them had volunteered for this. The Zephyrian Empire didn't ask for volunteers. The ship lurched as it entered hyperspace, and several people vomited. The aliens running the transport barely glanced their way. To the Zephyrians, humans were cargo. Cheap, expendable cargo that happened to walk on two legs and follow orders. Listen up, meat. The voice belonged to Commander Vex, a 7-foot-tall Zephyrian whose blue-scaled hide bore the scars of a dozen campaigns. His forearms gestured dismissively at the human passengers. In 3 standard days, you'll reach Kepler 442b. The Void Swarm has been eating its way through the outer colonies for 6 months. Your job is simple. Stand between the bugs and our real soldiers. Try to last longer than 5 minutes. A woman near the front raised her trembling hand. Sir, we're not trained for combat. I'm a teacher. He's an accountant. She pointed at the man beside her. We don't know how to fight aliens. Vex's laugh sounded like grinding metal. That's why you're being paired with the beast units. The Rakathi, Ursinian, and Phylexian combat squads will keep you alive long enough to serve as proper bait. Maybe some of you will even survive to see the victory celebration. Marcus caught the eye of the woman who'd spoken. Sarah Martinez, according to the name tag they'd all been forced to wear. She had kind eyes, the sort that belonged on someone reading stories to children, not someone being shipped off to die in an alien war. He offered her a weak smile, which she returned gratefully. The next 3 days passed in a haze of fear and terrible foe. The Zephyrians provided nutrition paste that tasted like cardboard mixed with engine oil. When humans complained about the taste, the guards would laugh and remind them that dead soldiers didn't need to worry about flavor.
Marcus tried to learn what he could about their destination.
Kepler, D. The swarm was something that still gave the Empire's toughest warriors nightmares, a hive-minded species of insectoid predators that consumed everything in their path. They didn't just kill their enemies, they absorbed their knowledge, their tactics, their technology. Every world that fell made them stronger. Why are they using us? Asked David Park, a software engineer from Seoul, who'd been working late when the conscription ships arrived. We're not soldiers. We can't even hurt these things. Because we're free, Marcus replied quietly. They don't have to pay us, train us properly, or care if we die. We are a renewable resource. When the ship finally dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 442b, the reality of their situation hit like a physical blow. The planet's surface was covered in writhing black masses, void swarm hives that pulsed and grew like malignant tumors. In orbit, the twisted remains of the human colony ships drifted like metallic graveyards. The transport docked with a massive Zephyrian battle station, and the humans were herded into a cavernous bay where their new partners waited. Marcus had seen pictures of the beast races before, but nothing had prepared him for meeting them in person. The Rakathi stood nearly 9 feet tall, their reptilian hides covered in natural bone plates. Their claws could punch through steel, and their jaws could snap a man in half. The Ursinians resembled massive bears crossed with gorillas, their thick fur hiding muscles that could crush vehicles. The Phylexians moved with predatory grace, their feline features and razor-sharp reflexes making them perfect ambush hunters. All of them looked at the humans with barely concealed disgust. This is what they're giving us? The voice belonged to Thane Korath, a Rakathi squad leader whose scarred hide told the story of countless battles. These soft pink weaklings? I've seen newborns spawn with more natural weapons. Marcus found himself assigned to Korath's squad, along with Sarah, David, and 7 other humans. The Rakathi warrior towered over them, his yellow eyes glowing with contempt. I am Thane Korath of the Bloodstone clan, he announced. I have killed 17 different species of enemy in hand-to-hand combat. I have survived the poison swamps of Vethara and the ice storms of Nyxvium. You are the most pathetic warriors I have ever been cursed to fight alongside. Sarah stepped forward, surprising everyone, including herself. We didn't ask for this any more than you did. But we're here now, and we want to live. Teach us how to fight, and we'll watch your back. Korath stared down at her for a long moment, his head tilted in what Marcus hoped was curiosity rather than hunger. You speak boldly for prey. Very well. I will teach you to hold weapons without cutting yourselves. It is more than you deserve, but I refuse to die because of your incompetence. The training was brutal. The beast races had evolved for warfare, their natural instincts honed by millions of years of survival. Humans, by comparison, seemed laughably weak. But as the days passed, something unexpected began to happen. Where the beast warriors relied on instinct and overwhelming force, the humans began to think. They analyzed patterns, developed strategies, found ways to compensate for their physical limitations. Marcus, who'd been a logistics coordinator in his previous life, started tracking the training schedules and optimizing equipment distribution. Sarah used her teaching skills to help other humans learn faster. David began studying the alien technology, finding ways to modify weapons and armor for human use. Korath watched these developments with growing interest. You fight like cowards, he told Marcus, after a particularly intense training session. Hiding behind cover, setting traps, attacking from unexpected angles. It is not entirely without merit. Where we come from, the cowards are the ones who survive, Marcus replied, checking his plasma rifle for damage. The brave ones get remembered in songs, but they don't get to go home. The Rakathi's laugh was like rocks grinding together. Your world must breed very strange warriors.
We don't have warriors, Sarah said, joining the conversation.
We have people who learn to fight when they have to. It was Korath who first noticed the change. During a simulated battle against holographic void swarm creatures, the humans had begun working together in ways that defied their individual limitations. They covered each other's weaknesses, shared information constantly, and adapted their tactics in real time based on changing conditions. How do you coordinate so efficiently? He asked Marcus after watching the humans dismantle a simulated swarm nest, using tactics that should have been impossible for such inexperienced fighters. Marcus paused, realizing he'd never really thought about it. We talk to each other. We share what we know. When someone has a better idea, we listen. Even when they have no rank, no established dominance? Especially then. The best ideas can come from anyone. Korath's scales rippled in what Marcus had learned to recognize as deep thought. Among the Rakathi, hierarchy was everything. Orders flowed down from the strongest to the weakest, and questioning authority was a death sentence. The humans' collaborative approach was completely alien to him. But it was also undeniably effective. Word of the humans' unconventional training spread through the station. Other beast squad leaders began observing their exercises, initially to mock the weak aliens, but gradually with growing respect. The Ursinian commander, Grimjaw, was the first to ask direct questions. Your people share knowledge freely, he rumbled, his massive form blocking out the overhead lights. This is not the way of warriors. Warriors hoard their secrets, their advantages. Maybe that's why you're losing the war, David said quietly. The Bay fell silent. Challenging the beast races was considered suicidal, but David pressed on. Every time you lose a warrior, you lose everything they knew. All their experience, their innovations, their discoveries, it dies with them. Grimjaw's roar shook the deck plating, but instead of violence, his expression showed something like revelation. You claim that sharing weakness makes strength.
Sharing knowledge makes knowledge,
Sarah corrected. And knowledge is what separates thinking beings from animals. The real test came during their first combat drop. Intelligence had located a small void swarm outpost on Kepler, 442b's smaller moon, and the mixed squads were tasked with destroying it before the bugs could establish a full colony. It should have been routine, a quick strike against a minimally defended position. Instead, they walked into a trap. The Void Swarm had evolved since their last encounter with Empire forces. The bugs had learned to mimic Empire communication protocols, and they'd used false intelligence to lure the strike force into a prepared kill zone. What should have been 50 defenders turned into 500, and the cave system they'd been told to clear was actually a massive underground hive. The B squads responded exactly as their training dictated. They charged forward with overwhelming force, relying on their natural weapons and battlefield experience. Against any normal enemy, it would have worked perfectly. But the Void Swarm had absorbed the tactical knowledge of dozens of defeated species, and they were ready. Marcus watched in horror as Rakathi warriors were dragged down by swarms of smaller bugs, while the larger creatures targeted their obvious strengths. The Asinians found their thick fur clogged with acidic spores that ate through their natural armor. The Phylexians discovered that their speed meant nothing in the twisting tunnels where ambush predators waited around every corner. "Fall back!" Korath roared, his squad scattered and blooded. "Regroup at the landing zone." But Marcus was staring at his tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. "Wait!" he called out, surprising himself with his boldness. "They're hurting us. Look at the pattern. Every time we try to retreat, they drive us deeper into the hive. They want us to run." Korath snarled, his natural instincts screaming at him to fight his way out. "Then, what do you suggest, human?" "We cannot fight them in their own nest." "We don't fight them," Marcus replied, his fingers flying over his communicator, as he contacted other human members of the strike force. "We outthink them." What happened next would be talked about in Empire military academies for decades. Instead of playing the Void Swarm's game, the humans began doing what humans did best. They started sharing information and adapting in real time. Sarah noticed that the bugs avoided certain areas of the cave system where strange mineral formations created electromagnetic interference. David discovered that their standard plasma weapons were almost useless against the creature's adaptive armor, but that the mining charges they'd brought for demolition work had a delayed fuse that the bugs couldn't adapt to quickly enough. Most importantly, Marcus realized that they could use the Void Swarm's greatest strength against them. The hive mind that made them so effective also made them predictable. Every tactical adaptation was shared instantly across all creatures, which meant that a feint in one area would trigger responses everywhere. "Listen to me," Marcus broadcast to all human squad members. "I need 3 teams to create diversions in sections C4, G7, and K12. Make lots of noise, fire everything you have, then retreat along predetermined routes. The real attack team will hit the hive core while they're responding to the false threats." "You're asking us to split our forces in the face of superior numbers," Grimjaw protested. "This goes against every principle of warfare." "Every principle of your warfare," David corrected. "We're not trying to outfight them. We're trying to outthink them." The plan worked better than anyone had dared hope. The Void Swarm creatures rushed to respond to the multiple diversions, leaving the hive core defended by only a handful of larger beings. The real attack team, a mixed group of humans and beasts working in perfect coordination, breached the central chamber and destroyed the queen before the scattered defenders could regroup. As they extracted under covering fire, Korath found himself fighting beside Marcus and Sarah with a ferocity he'd never experienced before. These soft, weak humans had somehow turned a guaranteed massacre into an impossible victory. "How?" he asked as their transport lifted off from the moon's surface. "How did you know their response patterns? How did you coordinate so many variables?" Marcus looked at his alien partner, seeing something that might have been respect in those predatory yellow eyes. "We learned it from you," he said simply. "You taught us how to fight, we already knew how to think." But Korath was beginning to understand that the humans had taught him something too. As he watched Marcus tend to Sarah's wounds with the same fierce protectiveness he'd seen from Rakathi protecting their clutchmates, he realized that these strange, weak creatures had somehow become his pack. The thought terrified him almost as much as it thrilled him. Back on the command station, reports of the successful mission spread quickly through the ranks. What should have been a minor victory against a small outpost was being hailed as a masterpiece of tactical innovation. More importantly, it was the first time in the war that Empire forces had successfully outmaneuvered the Void Swarm's collective intelligence. Commander Vex studied the after-action reports with growing unease. The humans weren't supposed to be strategists. They were supposed to be expendable shock troops who bought time with their lives. This new development complicated everything. "Sir," his aide interrupted, "we're receiving requests from 17 different beast squad leaders. They all want human tactical advisors assigned to their units." Vex's scales darkened with displeasure. The beast races were supposed to be the Empire's loyal attack dogs, following orders without question. If they started thinking for themselves, if they started questioning established doctrine, "Denied," he said flatly. "The humans will remain in their current assignments. And increase surveillance on all mixed units. I want to know everything these softskins are teaching our warriors." But down in the squad bays, the damage was already done. The Beast Warriors had tasted victory achieved through intelligence rather than brute force, and they wanted more. When Korath approached Marcus that evening, his request was simple. "Teach us," he said. "Teach us to think like humans." Marcus looked around the bay, seeing Ursinians and Phylexians gathering to listen. These weren't weak creatures begging for help. These were the Empire's most feared warriors, voluntarily asking to learn from the species they'd been told was inferior in every way. "Teaching goes both ways," Marcus replied carefully. "If we share our knowledge with you, what happens to us when this war is over? Do we go back to being expendable cargo?" Korath's laugh was different now, warmer, more genuine. "Pack bonds are not temporary, human. When this war is over, you will have a place among us. This I swear on the bones of my ancestors." Similar oaths echoed from the gathered warriors, and Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since leaving Earth: hope. These creatures were offering them something the Empire never had: respect earned through mutual trust and shared sacrifice. As the first day of their unlikely alliance drew to a close, none of them realized they were about to discover just how far humanity was willing to go to protect their new family. The Void Swarm had been the galaxy's greatest threat for 6 months. They were about to meet something worse. The attack came without warning. Marcus jolted awake to the sound of emergency klaxons and the ship's hull buckling under weapons fire. Red emergency lights bathed everything in hellish crimson as he rolled out of his bunk and grabbed his gear. "All hands to battle stations!" The announcement crackled with static and barely controlled panic. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Through the viewport, Marcus could see the source of the chaos. 3 massive Void Swarm bioships had materialized out of hyperspace, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent weapons arrays. They were unlike anything in the intelligence reports. These weren't the crude, instinct-driven creatures the Empire had been fighting. These ships moved with purpose, coordination, and terrifying intelligence. The command deck was chaos. Marcus found himself pressed against a bulkhead as Zephyrian officers ran past, their usual arrogance replaced by naked fear. Through the tactical displays, he could see the true scope of the disaster. The Swarm hadn't just found them. They'd brought a fleet that dwarfed the Empire battle group. "How many?" Commander Vex demanded, his forearms working frantically over control panels. 47 confirmed bioships, his tactical officer replied. "More emerging from hyperspace every minute." "Sir, their formation patterns, they're not random. They're implementing coordinated tactics we've never seen before." Vex's scales went pale. "That's impossible. The Swarm doesn't use strategy. They overwhelm through numbers and brutality." "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving surrender demands in perfect Zephyrian military protocol." The bridge fell silent except for the sound of distant explosions. The implications hit everyone at once. The Void Swarm hadn't just learned to mimic their communications, they'd absorbed their entire tactical doctrine. Marcus felt a heavy hand on his shoulder and turned to see Korath, the Rakathi's expression grim. "Your people need to evacuate to the assault pods. We're abandoning ship." "What about you?" "The beast companies will hold the docking bays as long as possible. Buy time for the evacuation." Korath's natural armor was already scarred from flying debris. "Take your pack and go." "Our pack includes you now," Marcus said firmly. "Remember, pack bonds aren't temporary." For a moment, Korath's predatory features softened. "You would fight beside us, even knowing you will likely die? That's what family does." The next hour descended into nightmare. The Beast Warriors took defensive positions throughout the ship, while human tactical coordinators established communication networks and evacuation routes. But the Void Swarm had learned too much. Every defensive strategy the Empire forces employed was countered within minutes. Marcus crouched behind an overturned cargo container, his plasma rifle growing hot from constant firing. Beside him, Sarah worked frantically on a portable command console, coordinating the movements of scattered defender groups. "They're learning faster than we can adapt," she called out over the weapons fire. "Every time we try a new tactic, they counter it almost immediately. Then we need to do something they can't learn from," Marcus replied, an idea forming in his mind. "Something that doesn't make tactical sense." Through their communication network, Marcus reached out to every human on the ship. "Listen to me. The Swarm learns by absorbing successful tactics, right? So what happens if we deliberately use terrible tactics? What if we do everything wrong?" David's voice crackled through the comm system from his position 3 decks down. "You want us to lose on purpose?" "I want us to confuse them. Make them think like us instead of like them. Feed them so much contradictory information that their hive mind starts second-guessing itself. It was insane. It was tactically unsound. It went against every principle of warfare ever developed, which made it perfect for fighting an enemy that had learned all those principles. The humans began implementing deliberately flawed strategies. They split their forces when they should have consolidated. They retreated from strong positions and advanced into obvious traps. They wasted ammunition on pointless targets while ignoring strategic objectives. The Void Swarm creatures, their hive mind, programmed to analyze and counter enemy tactics, began making mistakes. They overcommitted to defending positions the humans didn't actually want. They fell back from areas where the humans were pretending to retreat. Most importantly, they started hesitating, something no swarm creature had ever done before. Korath watched in amazement as Marcus deliberately led his squad into what appeared to be a suicide charge against a heavily defended corridor, only to suddenly veer off at the last second and capture an undefended weapons locker. "This is madness," the Rakathi muttered, but he was grinning as he said it. "Glorious, beautiful madness." "It's working," Sarah reported from her console. Swarm response times are increasing. They're showing signs of analysis paralysis. But their success was temporary. Even as the human tactics bought precious time, the swarm fleet was systematically destroying the Empire ships. Escape pods launched into space only to be consumed by biofighters. The beast warriors fought with desperate courage, but they were being overwhelmed. "Marcus," Korath's voice was urgent over the comm. "The docking bay is lost. We're falling back to your position, but there are too many of them. This ship is finished." Marcus looked around at his human companions. They'd come so far from the terrified conscripts who'd been loaded onto transport ships like cattle. Now they were warriors, tacticians, and most importantly, family to creatures who'd never known what it meant to trust another species. "There has to be something else we can do," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "Some advantage we haven't used yet." "What advantage?" David Beated asked bitterly. "We're outnumbered 1,000 to 1 by creatures that can absorb everything we know. We're weak, we're slow, and we're about to die." Marcus stared at his friend, something clicking into place. "That's it. That's our advantage." "What's our advantage?" "Being weak? Being human." Marcus was already moving, his hands flying over Sarah's command console. "The swarm learns by absorption, right? They take in successful tactics and biological adaptations. But what happens when they try to absorb something that can't be absorbed?" Sarah's eyes widened as she understood. "Human psychology, our way of thinking. They can copy our tactics, but they can't copy how our minds actually work. And there's one human trait that no hive mind could ever understand or replicate." Marcus opened a channel to every remaining defender on the ship: human, Rakathi, Ursinian, and Phylexian. "This is going to sound crazy, but I need everyone to trust me. We're going to surrender." The silence that followed was deafening. "Surrender?" Grimjaw's roar echoed through the comm system. "I would rather die with honor than submit to these parasites." "We're not really surrendering," Marcus explained quickly. "We're going to give them exactly what they want, access to our minds, but we're going to do it in a way that breaks their hive consciousness." The plan was born from desperation and built on hope. Instead of fighting the swarm's attempt to absorb their knowledge, they would invite it. But they would do so while flooding their minds with the most human thoughts possible. Individual memories, personal relationships, contradictory emotions, and irrational fears. "Fill your minds with everything that makes you human," Marcus broadcast as swarm creatures began boarding the ship. "Think about home. Think about people you love. Think about dreams that don't make sense and fears that aren't logical. Remember what it feels like to be an individual." The beast warriors, despite their initial confusion, began to understand. They thought about their own experiences of individuality, the pride of personal achievement, the pain of individual loss, the complex relationships that couldn't be reduced to simple pack dynamics. When the swarm creatures reached them, they found exactly what they expected: defeated enemies, ready to be absorbed into the collective consciousness. The biomechanical tendrils extended, connecting with the neural systems of their captives and beginning the process of extracting useful knowledge. But something went wrong almost immediately. Marcus felt the alien presence in his mind, cold and calculating, trying to categorize and catalog his thoughts. But human minds weren't designed for categorization. His memories of Earth were tangled up with his feelings for Sarah, His tactical knowledge was intertwined with his fear of losing Korath. His understanding of weapons systems was colored by his worry about David's safety. The swarm intelligence tried to separate useful information from emotional clutter, but it was like trying to unweave a tapestry while it was still on the loom. Every tactical insight came with a dozen personal attachments. Every piece of strategic knowledge was wrapped in layers of individual experience. Worse, the human tendency toward empathy began spreading through the connection. Marcus wasn't just thinking about his own experiences. He was thinking about what it must be like to be Korath, to carry the weight of clan honor and personal pride. He was imagining Grimjaw's perspective, the Ursinian's simple love of battle transformed into something deeper and more complex through friendship with humans. The swarm hive mind, designed for efficient collective thought, began experiencing something it had never encountered: perspective. Not just one viewpoint, but dozens, all simultaneously valid and contradictory. The certainty that had driven the collective for millions of years started to fracture. Through the neural link, Marcus could feel the change propagating. The swarm creatures on the ship began hesitating, their movements becoming uncertain as individual thoughts started to intrude on collective purpose. The bioships in the fleet started making uncoordinated maneuvers as their shared consciousness struggled with the concept of personal opinion. But the real damage was being done by the beast warriors. Their minds, touched by human concepts of individual worth and personal relationships, were adding their own complexity to the mix. Korath's fierce loyalty to his new packmates was being absorbed alongside his tactical knowledge. Grimjaw's newfound respect for intellectual cooperation was spreading through the link. The Phylexians' growing understanding of trust between species was becoming part of the collective consciousness. The swarm had spent eons absorbing the knowledge of conquered species, but it had always done so by stripping away everything personal, everything individual, everything that made them unique. It kept the useful information and discarded the messy complexity of actual consciousness. But human consciousness couldn't be separated from human emotion, human relationships, human irrationality. And now that the beast warriors had been touched by human thinking, their minds couldn't be cleanly absorbed either. Marcus felt the moment when the hive mind began to collapse. It started as confusion, then escalated to something approaching panic as the collective consciousness tried to process millions of contradictory individual perspectives simultaneously. The efficient unity that had made the swarm so dangerous began tearing itself apart under the weight of actual thought. The swarm creatures on the ship suddenly convulsed, their biomechanical systems shorting out as their controlling intelligence fragmented. Through the viewports, Marcus could see the bioships in space beginning to drift, their coordinated movements replaced by confused wandering.
"What's happening?" Sarah gasped, as the neural link suddenly disconnected, leaving them free but disoriented.
"They're learning what it means to be individual," Marcus replied, watching in fascination as swarm creatures began moving independently of each other. Some were trying to continue their mission, others were simply stopping in place, while still others seemed to be exploring their newfound autonomy. Korath staggered to his feet, his scales rippling with shock. "The collective has broken. I can feel it through the link. They're not thinking as one anymore. They're thinking as many." The transformation wasn't uniform. Some swarm creatures simply shut down, their consciousness unable to handle individual existence. Others began displaying behaviors that were almost curious. A few even seemed to be attempting communication with their former captives. But the immediate crisis was over. The swarm fleet, without unified command, began dispersing. Some bioships continued attacking out of programmed instinct, but most simply drifted away, their crews struggling to understand their new existence as individuals rather than components of a collective. "Sir," the communications officer reported to Commander Vex, his voice filled with wonder, "the swarm ships are withdrawing." "All across the sector, our forces are reporting the same thing. The coordinated attacks have stopped." Vex stared at the tactical display, trying to process what had happened. "How is this possible? The swarm has never retreated, never shown confusion, never. They learned how to be human," Marcus said quietly from behind him. "And that broke them." The Zephyrian commander turned, his four arms trembling with emotion that could have been rage or awe. "You did this? You weak, pathetic creatures somehow defeated the greatest threat the galaxy has ever known?"
"We didn't defeat them," Sarah corrected.
"We taught them to defeat themselves. We showed them what they'd been missing all these eons. The beautiful, terrible complexity of individual consciousness." As rescue ships arrived to evacuate survivors, Marcus found himself standing with his mixed squad, human and alien, weak and strong, but united in ways that transcended species boundaries. They'd fought together, bled together, and saved each other more times than he could count. "What happens now?" David asked, watching as swarm bioships disappeared into hyperspace, their crews probably arguing among themselves for the first time in their species' history. Korath's laugh was warm with genuine affection. "Now we go home, pack brother, all of us together." But Marcus was looking at the approaching Empire ships with growing unease. They'd won the war, broken the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known, and proven that human and beast could work together as equals. The question was whether the Empire would see that as a victory or as a threat to their own authority. Commander Vex's expression, as he watched human and beast warriors embracing his family, suggested the answer wouldn't be what they hoped for. The war against the Void Swarm was over, but Marcus was beginning to suspect their real fight was just beginning. The celebration lasted exactly 12 hours. That's how long it took for the Empire's true response to become clear. Marcus stood in the detention bay alongside his squad, watching through reinforced transparasteel as Zephyrian guards took positions outside. They'd been separated from the Beast Warriors immediately upon docking at the main Imperial station. The official explanation was debriefing and medical evaluation. The reality was imprisonment. "I don't understand," Sarah said quietly, her voice echoing in the sterile chamber. "We won, we stopped the swarm. Why are they treating us like criminals?" David sat hunched against the far wall, his face pale with realization. "Because we proved something they never wanted proven. We showed that humans aren't inferior. Worse than that, we showed that their precious beast warriors will choose us over them." Through the viewport, Marcus could see the beast companies being loaded onto separate transports. Korath caught his eye for a moment and touched his chest in what Marcus had learned was a Rakathi gesture of pack loyalty. The message was clear. This wasn't over. Commander Vex appeared outside their cell, flanked by 6 guards. His blue scales had darkened to an almost purple hue, a sign of deep agitation that Marcus had learned to recognize. "Open it," Vex ordered. The containment field shimmered and died, but the guards' weapons remained trained on the humans. Vex stepped inside, his 4 arms clasped behind his back in a gesture of military authority. "You've created quite a problem," he said without preamble. "The beast companies are refusing transfer orders. They claim pact bonds with their human squad mates. Some are even demanding that you be released into their custody. And that's a problem because?" Marcus asked carefully. Vex's laugh was bitter. "Because the beast races exist to serve the Empire. They are weapons, not citizens. They don't get to make demands, form attachments, or question orders. Your little demonstration of human cunning has contaminated our most valuable military assets." Sarah stepped forward, her teacher's instincts overriding her fear. "Contaminated? We helped them become more than just weapons. We gave them the ability to think for themselves, to grow beyond their programming." "Exactly." Vex's eyes glowed with cold fury. "Do you have any idea how long it took to breed that independence out of them? Centuries of careful genetic manipulation and psychological conditioning to create the perfect soldier, strong enough to fight our enemies, smart enough to follow orders, but never intelligent enough to question them." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. You deliberately kept them from reaching their potential. You stunted their intellectual development to maintain control. And now you've undone centuries of work in a matter of weeks. Vex's control finally cracked. The Rakathi are forming councils. The Ursinians are questioning battle doctrine. The Phylexians are developing their own tactical innovations. They're becoming people. Marcus found himself smiling despite the danger. "You say that like it's a bad thing." "For the Empire, it is catastrophic. Our entire military structure depends on unquestioning loyalty from the beast races. If they start thinking for themselves, if they start demanding rights and representation," Vex shuddered, "it would be the end of everything we've built." "Maybe it's time for something new to be built," David said quietly. Vex spun toward him, rage radiating from every scale. "By primitives who were barely space-capable when we found them? By creatures so weak they need weapons to hunt their own food? You think you can create something better than an empire that has dominated the galaxy for 3,000 years?
"We already have," Sarah replied. "We created friendship."
We created trust between species that were taught to see each other as tools. We created a fighting force that accomplished the impossible because they fought for each other instead of for conquest." The Zephyrian commander stared at her for a long moment. How naive. "Do you think friendship will build starships? Do you think trust will maintain order across 1,000 worlds? The galaxy needs structure, hierarchy, control. Without them, there is only chaos. Without them, there's freedom, Marcus said. And free people accomplish things that slaves never could. Vex turned to leave, then paused at the threshold. You'll have time to reconsider your philosophy. The High Command has decided that humans are too dangerous to be allowed to contaminate other species. You're being relocated to a secure facility where you can't spread your ideas. As the containment field reactivated, Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the recycled air. What kind of facility? The kind where inconvenient problems disappear permanently. The transport ship that came for them 3 days later was different from the crude carriers that had brought them from Earth. This vessel was sleek, heavily armored, and bore the insignia of the Imperial Security Division. As they were loaded aboard in energy restraints, Marcus caught sight of similar ships departing in different directions. The Empire wasn't just relocating the humans from his battle group. They were gathering every human in Imperial service. How many of us were there? Sarah asked quietly as they were sealed into yet another detention compartment. Thousands, replied Dr. Christine now. Elena Vasquez, a xenobiologist who'd been part of a different battle group. Maybe tens of thousands. They've been conscripting humans from every colony world for months. And now they're collecting us all in one place. David observed grimly. That's never a good sign. The ship's destination turned out to be an asteroid mining facility in the Kronos system. A place so remote that the nearest inhabited world was 3 months away by hyperspace. The facility itself was a maze of tunnels and chambers carved from solid rock, with no possibility of escape and no hope of rescue. But the Empire had made one crucial mistake. In their haste to contain the human contamination, they'd underestimated just how far that contamination had already spread. Marcus realized something was wrong when their transport docked. The Imperial guards who met them moved with unfamiliar precision, and their formation tactics were subtly different from standard Zephyrian doctrine. It wasn't until he saw their squad leader that he understood. "Greetings, Pack Brothers," rumbled a familiar voice. "Welcome to the revolution." Korath stood at the head of what appeared to be an Imperial security detail, but Marcus could now see that half the guards were actually beast warriors in stolen uniforms. The Rakathi's grin showed far too many teeth to be friendly by normal standards, but to Marcus, it was the most beautiful sight in the galaxy. "How?" was all Marcus managed to say. "Your lessons were very thorough," Korath replied as his warriors quickly disabled the real guards with stunning efficiency. "We learned to think tactically, to plan beyond simple assault. Most importantly, we learned that following unjust orders is not loyalty. It is cowardice." Behind him, Grimjaw emerged from the shadows, his massive form somehow having concealed itself in the narrow corridor. "The beast companies have voted. We will not serve an empire that treats thinking beings as property." "Voted?" Sarah asked in amazement. "Another concept you taught us," admitted Clawsom, the Phylexian squad leader who materialized beside them with characteristic stealth. "Democracy is messy, but effective." As they moved through the facility, Marcus learned the scope of what the Beast Warriors had accomplished. The revolt had spread through the Imperial military like wildfire. Entire battle groups had mutinied when ordered to suppress their human packmates. Beast Warriors had seized ships, liberated prison facilities, and established contact with resistance movements on a dozen worlds. "The Empire is calling it the Great Contamination," Korath explained as they reached a command center where human and beast worked side by side over communication arrays and tactical displays. "High Command believes human psychology is some sort of infectious disease that corrupts proper military thinking." "Maybe it is," Marcus said. "Watching a Rakathi warrior and a human technician collaborate on modifying weapon systems with an efficiency that would have been impossible under Imperial doctrine. Maybe what we're spreading is the idea that every thinking being deserves respect and freedom." The command center was buzzing with activity as reports came in from across the galaxy. The revolution was spreading faster than the Empire could contain it. On some worlds, the beast races had liberated human populations and established joint governments. On others, mixed military units had declared independence and were defending themselves against Imperial retaliation. "What's our strategic situation?" David asked, slipping naturally into the role of tactical coordinator he'd developed during the war. "Complicated," admitted Commander Thix, a Sinian who'd apparently been elected as overall military coordinator, another impossible development that would have given Imperial strategists nightmares. "We control approximately 30% of the former Imperial fleet and have secure bases on 47 worlds. But the core Zephyrian systems remain loyal to High Command, and they still have superior numbers." Marcus studied the galactic display, seeing patterns that reminded him of the early days of the Void Swarm War. They'll try to crush us quickly before the rebellion can spread further, probably massive retaliation against rebel worlds to make examples. Agreed. Korath nodded. Which is why we need to do something they won't expect, such as... The Rakathi's grin was predatory but warm. We're going to give them exactly what they claim to want. We're going to cure the galaxy of human contamination. The plan was vintage human thinking. Tactically unsound, strategically brilliant, and utterly unpredictable. Instead of fighting a defensive war against superior Imperial forces, they would go on the offensive, but not against military targets or strategic installations. They were going to liberate every human in Imperial space. It's impossible, protested Captain Vesh, a Zephyrian officer who defected to the rebellion after witnessing Imperial atrocities. There are millions of humans on hundreds of worlds. You'd need 1,000 ships and perfect coordination. We have something better than perfect coordination, Sarah replied, working at a communication console that had been modified with both human and alien technology. We have a network. What she was describing would have been impossible under Imperial doctrine, but human social networking combined with beast warrior loyalty had created something unprecedented. Every liberated human was in contact with others across the galaxy. Every beast warrior had pack bonds that transcended species boundaries. The result was an intelligence network that could coordinate actions across interstellar distances in real time. You're talking about simultaneous operations on hundreds of worlds, David pointed out. Even if we could coordinate it, we don't have the ships or the personnel. We don't need ships, Marcus said, finally understanding the true scope of Korath's plan. We need converts. Every human we liberate becomes another teacher. Every beast warrior who learns to think for themselves becomes another recruiter. We're not fighting an invasion. We're spreading an idea. The operation began 3 days later. Across the galaxy, small teams of humans and beast warriors began what the Empire would later classify as the most successful psychological warfare campaign in galactic history. But it wasn't warfare in any traditional sense, it was education. On Kepler 452, a mixed team taught enslaved humans how to organize resistance movements while showing their Zephyrian guards what genuine loyalty looked like when it was earned rather than demanded. On New Thermopylae, beast warriors demonstrated to their Imperial commanders that thinking soldiers were far more effective than obedient ones. On Earth itself, the resistance movement that had been growing in secret suddenly found itself supported by orbital platforms crewed by liberated beast companies. The Empire's response was everything they'd expected: massive retaliation, orbital bombardments, and desperate attempts to contain the spreading contamination. But every act of brutality only strengthened the rebellion's cause. Moderate Zephyrians who'd been loyal to the Empire began questioning orders to massacre civilians. Beast warriors who'd remained neutral saw their packmates being slaughtered for the crime of independent thought. Marcus watched the reports coming in from across the galaxy, feeling a mixture of pride and sorrow. The revolution was succeeding beyond their wildest hopes, but the cost in lives was staggering. Entire worlds were being devastated as the Empire tried desperately to maintain control through fear and violence. Is it worth it? Sarah asked during a brief moment of quiet in the command center. All this death and destruction, just to prove that we're equals. Before Marcus could answer, Korath's voice came from behind them. Pack sister, you misunderstand what we fight for. We do not fight to prove we are equals. We fight to create a galaxy where being equal is simply assumed. The turning point came when the Beast Warrior Revolt reached the Imperial core worlds themselves. On Zephyr Prime, the Empire's capital, beast companies that had been stationed as honor guards suddenly declared their independence. But instead of violence, they offered something unprecedented: citizenship. We don't want to destroy the Empire, Grimjaw announced in a broadcast that reached every world in Imperial space. We want to transform it. The Zephyrians created us, trained us, and taught us to fight for civilization. Now we offer them the chance to learn what civilization truly means. The offer was simple. Abandon the hierarchical system that treated entire species as property, and join a new federation based on equality and mutual respect. Those who chose cooperation would be welcomed as partners. Those who chose to continue the old ways would be resisted, but not destroyed. It was a revolutionary concept, literally. For the first time in galactic history, a successful rebellion was offering reconciliation instead of revenge. The war ended not with a climactic battle, but with a vote. As world after world declared independence from the Empire and requested admission to the new Galactic Federation, even the core Zephyrian systems began to reconsider their position. When Zephyr Prime itself voted to join the Federation, Rather than continue a war they could no longer win, the Empire simply ceased to exist. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the new Federation headquarters, watching ships from 100 different worlds bringing delegates to the first Interspecies Council. Humans worked alongside Zephyrians, beast warriors served as both military advisors and civilian leaders, and even former Imperial officers had found places in the new government. Strange to think it all started with them calling us weak, David observed, joining him at the viewport. Maybe we are weak, Marcus replied thoughtfully, at least in all the ways they thought mattered. We're not strong, we're not fast, we don't have natural weapons or armor. But we have something they never understood. We know how to make other people stronger. Sarah approached from the communications center, a tired but satisfied expression on her face. The last of the former Imperial prison colonies have been liberated. Every human in the galaxy is now free. And the beast races? Korath asked as he joined their little group. Free to choose their own destinies for the first time in centuries. Some are joining the military, some are becoming teachers or engineers or artists. Some are even choosing to explore their own philosophies and cultures without Imperial interference. Marcus looked around at his unlikely family, human and alien, former enemies turned packmates, teachers and students all at once. They'd accomplished something that should have been impossible. They'd taken a galaxy built on hierarchy and oppression and transformed it into something approaching democracy and freedom. So what happens now? He asked. Korath's laugh was warm with affection and bright with possibility. Now we explore the galaxy together, Pack Brother. We learn from each other, we grow together, and we face whatever comes next as equals. Through the viewport, Marcus could see the scattered debris of void-swarmed bioships drifting in the distance. A reminder that the universe still held dangers and mysteries. But somehow, the future no longer seemed quite so frightening. They'd proven that different species could work together, that strength could come from diversity, and that the greatest weapon in the universe wasn't force or cunning or technology. It was hope. The humans had taught the galaxy something that no amount of Imperial conditioning could have suppressed, that every thinking being deserved dignity, respect, and the freedom to choose their own path. It was a lesson that would echo through the cosmos for generations to come, carried by the children of 100 worlds who would grow up knowing that differences made them stronger, not weaker. And in the quiet moments between the celebrations and ceremonies, when Marcus thought about the journey from conscripted cannon fodder to founding father of a galactic democracy, he couldn't help but smile. They'd proven that humanity's greatest power wasn't hidden after all. It had been there all along, waiting in the simple recognition that everyone, human, beast or otherwise, was worth saving. I battled beside beasts, then humanity unleashed its hidden power. HFY Sci-Fi Story.